Earlier in the year, I predicted that Nintendo would reveal both a new Mario Kart and a 3D Mario game for the Switch 2. Well, I was half right, because rather than Mario, we instead got a new Donkey Kong game. And that's great, Donkey Kong Bananza looks like heaps of fun. But what about everyone's favourite blue and red plumber? When could we expect to see a Mario platformer, either 2D or 3D, come to the Switch 2? Well, in this video, I want to talk through the various possibilities, from Odyssey expansions to Wonder sequels. Let's explore the question, when's the next Mario game coming? First, I want to talk about a potential 2D Mario platformer. 2D Mario is developed by Nintendo EPD Production Group 10, the same group that also works on Pikmin. Looking back through EPD 10's past releases, you see a kind of alternating between the two series. In 2012 came both New Super Mario Bros. 2 and U, both smaller iterative sequels. The following year came Pikmin 3, followed 2 years later by the original Super Mario Maker. At any given time, EPD 10 works on one of these two series. Come 2023, however, that pattern was broken. Pikmin 4 was released in July, followed by Super Mario Bros. Wonder in October. That short gap indicates that both Pikmin and Mario were in development simultaneously. But Pikmin 4's credits shed more light on the matter. The game was developed in partnership between Nintendo EPD Production Group 10 and third-party developer Eighting. It was almost certainly this shared partnership that allowed both titles to come out within a few months of each other. So, what does this mean for 2D Mario on the Switch 2? Well, it's been just 2.5 years since Wonder's release, which I think would probably be a bit tight for a new title to have completed development. Certainly not impossible, especially if the team were to build upon the groundwork of Wonder rather than starting entirely afresh, but the timing is still slim. But is EPD Group 10 even working on a new Mario title? There's always a chance that a new Pikmin game is in development instead, though that wouldn't necessarily rule out a new Mario title as well, were Nintendo to again partner up with an external studio like Eighting. But more pressingly, EPD Group 10 may choose to develop a new Mario Maker title, rather than something in the vein of Mario Wonder. Mario Maker 2 sold just over half the number of copies of Mario Wonder, which could suggest that original titles are more lucrative than the Maker games. But the Switch 2's mouse controls would surely lend themselves perfectly to Mario Maker 2, a fact which EPD 10 almost certainly will have taken into consideration. But if 2.5 years is indeed too short a time frame to have a game coming out soon, then there's another possibility: a Switch 2 edition of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Now, Mario Maker 2 could also receive a Switch 2 edition, but of the two games, I think Wonder makes a lot more sense. Nintendo could bolt on some kind of side game a la Bowser's Fury, which would take less development time and resources than a wholly new adventure. Wonder is a great candidate to receive a Switch 2 edition. It only came out a few years ago, it received critical acclaim, and could really benefit from an extra set of levels or a side mode of some kind. But of course, 2D Mario is just one side of the coin. Let's move on to 3D Mario. So, I don't think many people saw Donkey Kong Bananza coming. Almost everyone, myself included, considered a new 3D Mario game to be a given. But instead, Nintendo revealed Donkey Kong. Now, at this stage, there's still lots we don't know about Bananza, which makes it hard to predict how the game could affect the chances of a new 3D Mario title. We don't even know for sure which studio has been working on the game. But let's talk through some of the most likely possibilities. So, the number one most probable outcome is that Bananza was developed by Nintendo EPD Production Group 8, also known as EPD Tokyo. This studio is the 3D Mario team, responsible for Galaxy 1 and 2, 3D Land and 3D World, and of course, Super Mario Odyssey. EPD Tokyo hasn't released a brand new game in 7.5 years, with Odyssey releasing back in October 2017. That's a pretty huge gap, and one that's not easy to explain. Yes, in 2020, Nintendo came out with Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, which EPD Tokyo were certainly involved in. But Bowser's Fury was developed in partnership with one of Nintendo's American studios, Nintendo Software Technology, or NST. If NST took on the brunt of Bowser's Fury's development, then that leaves us with a big mystery. What have EPD Tokyo been doing for the past 7 years? The most obvious answer is Donkey Kong Bananza. The game seemingly has a lot in common with Super Mario Odyssey, from the game's explore and look for things structure to the visual style of the game. Plus, if Nintendo really did want to overhaul the long-running Donkey Kong franchise, then who better to put in charge of this important project than EPD Tokyo, who have an unimpeachable track record? But where would that leave 3D Mario? Well, on the face of it, not in a great position. If EPD Tokyo have indeed been making Bananza all this time, then it will be years at minimum until their next game is ready to play. But have they really been making Bananza all this time? We know for a fact that Nintendo regularly hold back completed games for extended periods of time, sometimes for years, until they deem the timing right. That's true of Fire Emblem Engage, among others. Could development on Donkey Kong Bananza have largely wrapped up a couple of years ago, with EPD Tokyo then moving on to 3D Mario? The idea is certainly not impossible, but I can't say I'm totally convinced. Nintendo have said in an interview that Bananza wouldn't have been possible on the original Switch due to its world destruction mechanic requiring a powerful processor. Would the company really have EPD Tokyo spend years developing a game, knowing that it wouldn't see the fruits of that labor for a number of years? I don't think that's likely. But all of that is assuming that Bananza is indeed an EPD Tokyo project. Again, that really seems by far the most likely possibility. But Nintendo have a number of other development studios. Take Canadian Next Level Games, for instance. Next Level Games' last project was 2022's Mario Strikers Battle League, which was a smaller scale game. Before that was, of course, 2019's Luigi's Mansion 3. Could Next Level Games have moved on to Donkey Kong after wrapping up Luigi's Mansion, with a smaller team taking on Mario Strikers at the same time? It's certainly possible, although, again, I'm not sure Nintendo would entrust this major Donkey Kong rebrand to a studio outside of Japan, even if Next Level Games are now a fully owned Nintendo subsidiary. But there's always a third option. What if Bananza is a co-development project, just like Pikmin 4? We've already seen how co-development made it possible for EPD 10 to release a new Pikmin and 2D Mario game in the same year. The same could be true of Donkey Kong and 3D Mario, though perhaps with the gap between releases being slightly larger. If EPD Tokyo closely oversaw Donkey Kong Bananza, but the brunt of the actual on-the-ground development went to another studio, even possibly Next Level Games, then a 3D Mario platformer could be closer than would otherwise be possible. All of this is, of course, complete speculation. Once Bananza is released in July, a look at the game's credits will shed far more light on all of this. For now, there's simply too many questions that remain unanswered. But if indeed a brand new 3D Mario platformer is years away, Then another option is a Nintendo Switch 2 edition of a game like Super Mario Odyssey. Odyssey remains the Switch's flagship Mario entry, with sales of over 29 million. The game never received much in the way of DLC, and adding on some kind of a side mode or collection of new kingdoms could satiate fans until a new game is ready to be released. However, compared to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, I think an Odyssey add-on is not quite so likely. While Breath of the Wild shows that even a game from the very beginning of the Switch's life can receive a Switch 2 edition, the majority of Switch 2 edition games are from the last few years. Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Super Mario Party Jamboree, and so on. More pressingly, Nintendo have already announced that Odyssey will be receiving a free update for the Switch 2. According to Nintendo's website, by connecting your Nintendo Switch 2 to the internet, you can download free updates to improve resolutions, frame rates, or add support for features such as game share in selected titles. So, if Super Mario Odyssey is already being updated for free on Switch 2, some kind of paid update muddies the water somewhat, I think. Finally, I think it's worth noting that a mainline Mario platformer is not the only route Nintendo can go in terms of representing the Mario franchise on the Switch 2. For one, if you asked Nintendo themselves when the next Mario game is coming, they'd tell you to pick up a copy of the Mario Kart World game for your Nintendo Switch 2 family of systems. Mario Kart World is a big, flashy, AAA game starring Mario, and Donkey Kong Bananza may not star Mario, but Donkey Kong is indelibly linked to our favourite blue and red plumber. In other words, there's two major Mario-related games launching in the Switch 2's first couple of months, even without a traditional Mario release. But what about further down the line? Well, assuming that next-level games are not involved in Bananza, then a new Luigi's Mansion game is likely not far off. The studio have a remarkably consistent release schedule of every 3 years, and it's been 3 years since Mario Strikers Battle League. Could a Luigi's Mansion 4 announcement be just round the corner? It's certainly a possibility. Then there's the Mario Sports spin-offs. Camelot, the developer behind Mario Golf and Tennis, haven't released a new game since 2021. Again, the announcement of the next Mario Tennis or Golf surely can't be far away at this point. And then, of course, there's a huge library of Switch games starring Mario characters that could be due for Switch 2 editions. Yoshi's Crafted World, Princess Peach Showtime, Mario and Luigi Brothership, among others. This could be Nintendo's approach to fill a possible gap in Mario releases, in the worst case scenario where both 2D and 3D Mario games aren't ready for a while yet. So, as you can see, the issue of when the next major Mario outing will hit the Switch 2 is a pretty complicated one. I think all in all, a 2D game seems more probable in the short term, given the high chance that the 3D Mario team in Tokyo are indeed the ones behind DK Bananza. But is a 2D Mario title the kind of game that could serve as a showcase for the increased power of the Switch 2? I'm not sure. When Super Mario Odyssey was released in 2017, I don't think anyone would have guessed that 7.5 years later, Odyssey would still be the most recent mainline 3D Mario platformer. But better to take the time to put out a truly great game than rush out some Mario slop. So whenever the next 2D or 3D Mario games are ready, I look forward to seeing where Nintendo will take the series next. Hey, thanks for watching, and a big thank you to my patrons for making videos like this possible. In particular, Aaron and Catherine, Brett and Eric, Candy Crystal, Cyprian Eov, The Real Procyon, Daryl Gero, Ellie Birnbaum, Elise Rose Barsness, Eliza the Doe, Jim Gilsonan, Kieran Chan, Kelly Wright, Lucas Little, Michael Gunter, Preston Kurth, Skator Pie, Thomas Söderlund, and Tlazot Lalia.